Hi, everyone. I'm Casey. I'm a vocalist, bassist, and composer, bringing people together to talk about creativity. And I'm so excited to bring on Anthony Ty Johnson, who's here. You can see he's a drummer and composer based in Los Angeles right now. He released his debut CD, Personality, in 2018 and recently graduated from CalArts with a degree in music performance. He is a fierce collaborator and brings excellence to every project he's a part of. He's enthusiastic and has positive energy both on and off the stage that is totally refreshing and inspiring. Side note, I remember observing Anthony teach, he doesn't know I'm going to say this, Anthony teach a high school percussion class. This was, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. And at the end of the rehearsal, it was suddenly revealed that Anthony had composed all of the music. It was gorgeous. Anthony has so many tricks up his sleeve, and sometimes you don't know the magic that you're hit with until after it's happened. On another personal note, I've seen him in many different musical contexts. He is versatile and professional and a wonderful person. So please go hire him. Welcome, Anthony. What's up?
Wow. Thank you. I feel so powerful now. Wow. But thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on talking with a musical genius, a musical powerhouse, a creative genius, a creative visionary, might I say. No. That's Casey. But yes, thank you. I'm so excited. That was the nicest intro ever. I forgot about that high school thing. I forgot that even happened.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
That was a while back. That's been a while, but dang. Well, I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, okay, so just for some context, because I'm going back to that moment, which was, I think there was a full-on color guard marching band extravaganza with choreography, your composition. Yeah. I mean, the full shebang.
Yeah. It was, that one was, I think that was the last show I did with that school. But that's the school I went to previously. But I did that, and I wrote it with a writing partner, so I don't want to take full credit. But we wrote this original show, and we had all the kids running all over the place with drums and jumping and playing music and everything. But it was very, very cool. And that's right. And you came and you watched, and I was nervous the whole time because I was like, man, like Casey's here. She really knows how to write. And now I got to be like, look at this giant thing, and high schoolers are playing it. So it's, but happy times, good times. That was fun.
Yeah. So I've been talking with creative people, musicians primarily, and composers, and you're a composer yourself. And since we're talking about this piece that happened a really long time ago, I'm wondering what your composition process is like.
Okay. Well, usually the main way that it happens is usually I hear something, or I hear an idea, or I'm thinking about a certain artist sometimes. And then what I'll do is I'll try to get something down. Because at least for me, the scariest part is like the blank piece of paper. So I try to get something down, and usually it's in like GarageBand or Sibelius or something. And I try to kind of contextualize it as much as I can. And usually I'll just obsess over it for a while, and kind of put all my time and energy into that. But usually it just starts with a random idea. It either goes like in a voice memo or something, like most of us musicians do. We're just like in the corner, like talking into our phones, and everyone's like, what's going on over there? And that's us putting our ideas down. And so it's something like that. It's like, it's not super unheard of, but one of the things in quarantine that I've learned is that my ideas are best when I give them the patience of like, let me see this through first before I say this is not good or it's weird or something. But Yeah, but usually like a melody, bass line, or something comes first, and then I try to flesh it out. I
So
think that's the
a
yeah.
little piece, and then you said you obsess over it and you
Hmm.
kind of flush it out. So I was laughing when you said you're in the corner doing a voice memo. I've definitely done that. Like, oh gosh, I have this idea, but I'm with people. So what do I do? And I'm like whispering it
Yeah.
into my into my
Yeah.
phone so that I don't look too weird, but I'm
Mhm.
at least getting the idea down. Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah, and it happens in like weird times too. Like you'll just be like doing whatever, and like something will hit you, and you're like, if I forget this, I'm gonna be so mad later because this seems like in the moment it seems like absolute genius when it hits you. And so yeah, sometimes I've been at like work and like I'm like, man, I've got to figure out a way to do this without like seeming like really weird looking. I used to work at a daycare, and I remember one time like it was crazy and something hit me, and I was like, okay, I have to make sure that kid doesn't run away. This kid's freaking out. There's food being thrown for some reason, and it's not even lunchtime, but I have this idea and I have to put it in my voice memo. And I remember it's like a 5-second voice memo, and it just sounds like absolute chaos, but me like whispering into my phone. You know, we have to do what we have to do, you know? But I do.
I would think at a preschool that's, the safest place to be totally weird though.
That's true. That's true. No, you're right. You're so right. I should have been like, whatever. It's chaos. So I'm just over here with my phone. You can stare if you'd like, but like, just go away, Timmy. Mind your own business. Read a book, Timmy, Write an essay. No, but yeah.
So tell people, I mean, I know you and I did
Yeah.
introduce you, but tell people who are watching. I see Lucas is here. Hey, Lucas. Cooper is here. Hi, thanks for joining us. Tell
Woo!
people who might not necessarily know you a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in Sacramento, and that's how I met all these great musicians and the wonderful Casey Lipka. Going to all the regular Sacramento things. So I went to ARC, American River, first intro into music and studying there. And then meeting everybody, playing on the scene a little bit. We even had a project at one time, well, several projects, it seemed. And doing that and just playing around and jamming and, trying to get better. And then I kind of went off to move to LA to kind of finish up my bachelor's. And I've been in LA pretty much ever since. I kind of go back and forth sometimes, but as for now, I'm in LA doing the music thing, or well, not right now, but the practicing thing, I guess. But yeah, Sacramento is where it all started, and I love it so much. I love Sacramento dearly. But yeah, let's see a little more about myself. You said everything so nicely in the front. Now I'm like, let me make it sound as good. I want it to sound just as good. But yeah, drummer composer. I mean, as a drummer, composing is something that doesn't necessarily come super easily, just because we're kind of in a different zone in terms of language. But again, going to college and hanging with musicians in Sacramento, I got a lot of composition chops from playing a bunch of other people's tunes or just collaborating. Yeah, and shout out, I always have to shout out my drum sensei, Rick Lauder. Oh my God, and me just everything. Yeah, man. Yeah, I have to talk about him every chance I get. But everyone in Sacramento knows who I'm talking about. He's the man, and he is my drum sensei. So that's, if you want to know why I'm good at all, Rick. That's Rick. So that's all you need to know. Drum sensei right there.
Yes, Rick is amazing. I'm hearing you talk about the importance of mentors and teachers on your musical personality, but also maybe your composition personality. Could you talk more about how Rick or other teachers have influenced your playing and your composing?
Sure. I think that, like you said, mentors are just so important in multiple senses of the term, in terms of how to not only compose music, but how to play other people's composed music. Because usually from a drummer standpoint, like when I was studying with Rick, we were more talking about music in any situation. So in terms of writing, so if someone brings in a tune of their own, I know how to look at it and say, okay, it needs this, it's in this style. So I need to kind of play in between like a Art Blakey kind of quasi Steve Jordan weird, like intersect kind of thing. And knowing how to do that's very important. But also, speaking of college, I mean, Dr. Joe Gilman, who is another like just, oh my gosh, just a megalith of musical knowledge. He gave me a lot of the compositional tools, and he also let me be like weirdly just weird all the time. So he was very patient with me going through like, 18th century, music theory. We were covering Beethoven, and I was just sitting over there being like, so what's a tritone sub, Dr. Gilman? Tell me what that is. I know these voice leading's great, but like, why the sharp 11? Like that kind of thing. And giving me, like the weird stuff. He was very, good in that way. And he really gave me a lot of tools in his, jazz composition class, jazz arranging, all that stuff. So, and then in terms of CalArts, that really kind of boosted, all of my musicality, because I was able to really that, I was able to really grow my compositional voice, but also just like my musicality, because a lot of times I'm playing other people's music, not my own. And so that's important to be able to look at a chart. You can't hear it. You just got to look at it and be like, okay, on this first playthrough, what do I need to do to kind of tell this story that someone else is trying to tell? And how can I help them do? Mentors are really good in that sense, because they can tell you like, listen to this, write this, try this, or be like, that didn't work. I do really well with people telling me that didn't work, because I don't know if it doesn't work. So
yeah, the important
yeah, especially for me, because I'll just keep doing it until someone says, yeah, no, maybe not. And so I'd say mentors are important for knowing how to write music, but also how to play other people's music, I'd say.
Yeah. I'm hearing the importance of feedback and how feedback other people shapes your composition and what you do or what you don't do. And I see, Lucas says, hi, Casey and Anthony. Great to see you both. Happy you're here, Lucas.
Lucas.
And Sandra says, scariest thing is the blank piece of paper. So true. Yes,
absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to go back to something that you were saying, talking about coming from a drum perspective. And I think you're saying that coming first, and then the composing coming later, and how you negotiate that as a composer, kind of coming from a different slant in the music. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. I mean, like, the drummer has a very clear perspective of the band. And in terms of, I can't necessarily write how I hear the band around me, because then it's going to be very drum centric. Meaning, like, I don't like drummer tunes. You know what I mean? Like, not to say that I don't like tunes written by drummers, because people like Brian Blade, beautiful composers. But you can't really show it to someone and be like, which person in the band wrote this? And they'd go to the drummer first. So in terms of that, I say I want my music to sound as if someone gave it to me, not me giving it to other people. Because I don't want it to be like, oh, look at this drummer tune. It's in 15 and it has 18 polyrhythms and everything resolves at the end, you know? Which, I mean, that sounds kind of sick though. So like, you know, like I might do that now, but in terms of that, I mean, like I want my tunes to have a great sense of melody and harmony and storytelling, just like any other tune. So I think it's a little bit of a different hat in that way, because I can't write it from the perspective of my instrument, say, because like it would sound a little selfish, I guess, if I tried to write from the drummer perspective.
Wow. That sounds like you have to be two totally different people, but that are connected the whole time. So you're a drummer, you're in the seat, but when you're composing, it sounds like you put on a totally different hat. So could you walk us through a piece that you wrote and how you approached that and what that looked like?
Sure. Let's see. Let me think of a good example. Oh, so one of the tunes off of my album, entitled Change of Season, that really resonates with a lot of people. That's been like the one, right, that comes back. And it's interesting because that one has the most clear story. And I remember I wrote that ARC coming back up again. I got to school early one day and it was like really fall. It was very pretty, you know, leaves, and it was like, it just had rained. And so it was like very nice and pretty. And it was one of those times in which you feel like your life was moving in a certain direction. It was like, it's a weird feeling of like, and this was like pre-CalArts, knowing I have to move on to something else, but not knowing what yet. And I was like, you know, and I remember just going to a practice room before any of my classes, because it was pretty early in the morning, and trying to play this feeling that I felt of this like change of season, both literally, because the seasons were changing, but also like in a life perspective. And so that one, I think, resonates with a lot of people because the composition process was, I feel something very specific. There's a very specific story that I can attach to it. What does this story sound like?
Mm.
You know, not necessarily scoring it, because I'm not accompanying any type of image or anything like that. Sound like me sitting right here feeling this weird feeling of like moving on. What does that sound like? And so that was the beginning of the tune. And I finished it a week before we recorded it. So, I mean, it was a long period of time, but at the same time, my life was still changing a week before the record because I couldn't go to CalArts yet. So it was like this long book that like played out, and I was able to be like, okay, I had the same feeling, but it's slightly different. So let me finish it up. And then it worked. And so I think, again, if I wrote that from a drummer perspective, it wouldn't have really worked, because what am I doing on that? Brushes? You know, no drummer sits down and gets their snare out and say, you know what, man, this brush pattern I'm playing is super hip. I think there's a tune here. Like, no. You know, I mean, that's true. That's true. That's true. Watch me in sometime in the future. I'll be like, man, this brush pattern is like hip. And I'll be like, oh, wait.
See, for me, it's the opposite because, well, not all the time, but, you know, there are different tools in the shed here. And when I get a drum groove that I'm excited about, that takes me in a totally different direction than I would if I wasn't composing with the drums in mind. Do you know does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's interesting because it's like almost the reverse of what we're talking about. It's like from a drummer perspective, I don't want to be so drum centric, but at the same time, there are those moments that do come from drum based, like a groove or something. And so, and that's interesting you mention that, because if it's like a digital thing, like if I'm playing like in Ableton, or like if it's like a producing thing, it usually starts with the drums, but it's not me. I think that's the difference. It starts with I don't focus on myself first. I think that's the, so if if it's all electronic, it's not me anyways. Like I'm not playing it. I am, but I'm like more like doing this or programming. So man, look at you, really making me think. So I think in terms of that is like, I think I'm just more cautious of making something sound very drum centric, because if that's how it goes, that's how it goes. There's one tune off of the album that's very drum centric, but it's like very specific. So I think, in terms of writing, to kind of circle back, because I don't want to ramble, I think is trying to think of the music first. And if it's drum centric, great. That's what needs to happen. But if not, no. And usually it'll show itself. You like midway through the idea, you kind of know where it's going. So, if I'm halfway through an idea, I'm like, okay, this is like really like harmonic centric. So I'm just playing groove, or like I'm just going to shred all over this thing. And both are relevant.
Totally. Totally. So. Katie, I don't know how to say her name, Hagman. I apologize.
Oh, yes.
If I'm getting your name wrong. She
No.
says, hello. Hi, I miss you. Thanks so much for joining us. Yeah. And, we keep talking about this album. So I want to give a shout out to Anthony that if you're interested in his music and checking out that album, you can go to his website here, which is anthonyjohnson.com. And that will take you to his album, Personality. It's so good. So good. I wanted to ask you, because you're talking about that one tune, change, that is talking about the seasons in your life.
Yeah.
And change and what that sounds like. So I'm hearing the conceptual idea. And how did you take that concept and then start to put music to it? What did that look like? I'm asking you specific questions here.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think, and again, like I went to the practice room and I was kind of, like messing around on the piano, and like, especially at that time, my piano skills were not like super hit. Like I wasn't, like a madman, which also affected my compositions, because usually, the writing is really based off of what you can kind of do in terms of like being able to hear it. So I remember sitting down and I was messing with this this kind of ostinato that felt soft, yet it was very clear what I was doing. And I think that's based of the thing. And I never want things to feel like contrived in terms of like, oh, I'm thinking, so I want this music to sound like it. Be kind of more like, if I feel like something's moving, what is the sound of motion to me? What sounds like something continually moving? And that's where that piano ostinato, that like kind of arpeggio in 6, because it kind of just cycles going. It's like a wheel. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. Let me put some chords beneath that sound really some notes, and when they kind of clashed into each other, some of them, and I was like, that makes me think, like, about it. And also, like, life itself isn't like super easy, and sometimes when things change for the better, it's because something is getting a little uncomfortable, or you're overstaying your welcome, in terms of like, this period of your life is like, it was great, but it's done. So you need to move on. So some of that uncomfort, some of that feeling of life moving. And I think honestly, it's just being open, because the one thing I could have done is I could have been like, oh man, well, this sounds too simple. This is a giant concept, but it's so simple. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I mean, like, it is a simple concept of like just growing up and getting older and doing something new. So it was like I was able to give myself some forgiveness in terms of like, again, getting the idea down and letting it play out before you discard it. That was extremely important. But also to your specific question, because I want to answer it specifically, knowing other music that sounds like what you're feeling, right? So having like a dictionary or like a bank of things that you are like, I associate this type of sound with this feeling. That's also important. So like knowing like, oh yeah, because the song in my head is like a Brian Blade ripoff. You know what I mean? Like, it's not an actual, I didn't take a chart and be like, okay, let me just like put this in a different key and be like, here you go. But like at the same time, like Brian Blade, his tunes, and he's a drummer, he's able to write with such emotion that it's like 1000% emotion. And I was like, okay, let me, what's Brian Blade-ish? Like a 6/4 backbeat kind of flowy thing that propels you into the chorus where you can really go in. And that's what we do on the record. Because Levy, the sax player of the century, goes in, right? And that was one of the cool things to see. I'm like, it sounds like how I was thinking about it. And so knowing that, I think like, okay, well, this kind of like a Brian Blade thing meets like a soft, pensive thing, like being able to do that as a musician is very important, because you have to be able to know what you're thinking of. It's like, I don't want to be like arrogant enough to think that I'm actually going to just not need any help. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Because like, just think about it how it is. And it's like, okay, this is a Brian Blade thing. Okay, let's go for it. And let's see. Because no one has ever come up to me and said, hey, man, I'm on to you. I know what you're doing. That's a Brian Blade ripoff. So it's,
yeah,
it's music.
I've listened to that album many times and I love that song. And I never really made the connection there. So I'm glad that you made that for me, so I can go back and listen with new ears, with new information.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not a good Brian Blade ripoff, but it is,
Oh
like
my
Brian
gosh.
is just like,
no. I'm gonna stop you right there. The album is so beautiful. Please go check it out. You can find Anthony's music at AnthonyTyJohnson.com. Just had to cut you off there because it is amazing. This album is amazing.
I should reword that so it's not like so self-deprecating. But in terms of like taking an influence from an artist and trying to think in that mindset, as opposed to like, being like, oh, this is like Brian Blade. It's like, no, homie, it's not, because it's not, it's good. It's a beautiful song, but it's not, I'm getting to that stage of like greatness, but not yet. But fun fact, on the record, that was the only time that song had been played in existence ever.
To this day?
No, I played it on my recital, but that was the first time it was played, and that was the only take we did.
Wow.
So that's like when it's just like when it all comes together.
That sounds like a magical moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I always tell people that, and I always want to very specifically say like no, I'm not bragging, but like there was something so magical about that, because it felt so much like that moment. And it was also the same type of year, which gives it some of its of credit, but like it was just so amazing having all these fantastic musicians come together and just completely get it, number one. But also, like, it was just such a fantastic moment to where I was like, move on, next tune. Like, that was it. That was it. Like, you know, so it was fantastic.
I heard you talk earlier about having a dictionary of terms, but really more so about making the decision of,
Yeah.
hey, this is my idea. It's simple and I like it and I'm sticking with it. Or the revision process of saying,
Yeah.
hey, I like this idea, but it still needs some work. So how do you make those decisions? What does that look like for you?
I mean, that's really that's interesting because I feel like I'm trying to figure that out right now. Because number one, I've tried to start from a place of being just kind to myself and being patient, because I don't want to be like, this sucks when it's not done. Because, like, you know, some things may sound weird in one context, but you put something else underneath it and it's like mind blowing. And then also it's like not everything has to see the light of day. You know, like some of it can just be you practicing writing. And so I think that sometimes it's just being honest. I think from a place of honesty and sounding like yourself, because there's only one you anyways. So we need that music in the world, right? Because I cannot write like you.
And
for many reasons, because you're writing. Now let me just turn this into a commercial real quick, because this is the Casey commercial. Casey can write the things that you have felt but you have never said out loud before. Deep, emotional, just like beautiful music, right? No, real talk. This is real talk. Hashtag real talk. We'll put that in the chat. It is beautiful stuff, right? And I would hate for you to be like, oh, well, this doesn't sound enough like this person. And then you tweak it to make it sound like that person. Because then I would have never heard the beauty of the music, right? It's like being honest and being like, there's only one Anthony. There's only one Casey. There's only one, you know, Brian Blade. There's only one Pat Metheny. There's only one Wayne Shorter. If they tried to write like someone else, we wouldn't have gotten the beautiful music that we have gotten. And so that's another thing. I'm like, well, this is what I'm trying to communicate right now. So I might as well just be honest and do it. And, you know, sometimes you do need a little help putting those ideas to the next level. So sometimes it is kind of being like, well, how would this person think of it? Or how would it sound like if this person played it? In Questlove's book, Creative Quest, which is a fantastic read, he says, like, sometimes he'll think about writing, like, what if two artists collaborated? Like, what if Prince did something with like Ella Fitzgerald, like a weird random combination, but like, what would it sound like? And so it's like that. And like you saying, you didn't know that song was a Brian Blade thing. It's like taking something that can be completely original or pre-existing, but put it in your own voice to where you're not like, you're being honest with yourself, you know? And that's hard for me to do, because sometimes I feel like my honesty is not that awesome, you know? Because I'll write a song, I'm like, this is what I'm feeling, but I don't like it. You know, and then someone else might be like, oh, dude, that's so dope. So it's kind of like, sometimes you just gotta throw it out there and someone will like it. And you gotta be okay with that. Not everything's like album recordable, but you know, it's like just being patient with yourself. Because I mean, you know.
Yeah, I'm hearing you talk a lot about the inner critic and your experience with your own inner critic, and honoring and valuing our individual voice. And man, it is that inner critic that gets in the way for sure.
Yep.
We all have it. They all say something different, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what barriers, since we're talking about inner critic, what barriers have you faced in your composition and how have you overcome those barriers?
Sure. I mean, I think the barriers are more failure or feelings of failure. I think I don't failure is the best like teacher, but I'm a hard-headed student. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the best, but I still to this day won't get it. You know, like I'll be like, oh my gosh. But at the same time, it's like it's a teachable moment. And so I think my compositional barriers were things that looked like such a weird moment of like, you suck, but it was like a moment to really learn. And this this takes me back. Speaking of my old, college days, back at ARC, which really, now that I mention it, just really keeps coming up.
Yeah,
It was a formative time.
Yeah.
Formative. I failed Theory B. I failed that sucker, and I was out, right? Because I couldn't take it again the next semester because it goes like every semester, like they'll do one in one in 3 and then 2 and 4. Like they'll switch the semester. So I couldn't do it the very next semester. It was the oral stuff, the sight singing stuff that got me, not the written stuff. I was good at that, but all the singing stuff I was not. So anyways, failed that miserably. But I took that next semester to just sit around Sibelius and start messing around and just like writing. And technically the failure was like, oh my gosh, I just failed music theory. B. We're not even talking like advanced stuff. We're talking like basic stuff. And I call myself an aspiring writer. However, that free semester of just writing without any rules, without any regulations, without anything, number one, most of those became the album, number one. And then number two, I was able to learn just based off of how things sounded against each other. And looking back on it, it couldn't have been more formative. Because technically, I failed a class that told you how to write music. And I was like, oh no, I can't write music. And that was like a mental barrier because I was telling myself, right, traditionally, how we're kind of taught is kind of if you fail a class, you have failed and there's a problem with what you're doing. And in some cases, that's true. Because sometimes, like myself, sometimes I'm just lazy. But sometimes it's because there's something that just is not there, not connecting yet. And so that was a barrier that I had to kind of be like, well, no, actually, like this isn't a problem. This is a time to do what I want and see what happens. And that was very formative. Another time of failure was when I couldn't go to CalArts my first semester when I was supposed to. I had to defer. And I was like, man, like this is like I'm not going to my next step. This is like, man, I just failed. Oh my gosh. Again, being really hard on myself, self-critic. That's the self-one talking. And then I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to get stuff done. And so I taught the most students I've ever taught in one time in my life. I had one of the most recurring gigs I've ever had in my life. We were playing at Graciano's. We were doing that gig. That was fun. And then I recorded the album. And so it's like, and that time of growth was like ridiculously good. So I think it's just more of like just being, again, the self-kindness is like really important, but looking at barriers as a way to kind of prod that fire and be like, let's take this and let's do something good with it. Because like at the end of the day, like, those things weren't really a big deal because like I'm on the other side completely graduated fine. So like, it didn't like really affect me extremely. So I think taking barriers and kind of using that to kind of like push yourself to the next thing. It's like the butterfly analogy. It's oversaid, but it's true. the caterpillar in the cocoon has to like really like strengthen and force its way out of that thing. And when you help it out, it can't fly because it's too weak, because it didn't have that time of strengthening to break out of the cocoon. Same thing, it's like, be easier on yourself, be kind to yourself, and just like go through it and really just learn something new and break through to that next step stronger than you were before. Because that's the thing. Like, you're not going to get better without some sort of resistance. And it's good, looking at failure and resistance as like a learning opportunity is much better than being like, oh, and eating a tub of ice cream by yourself, which I have done.
Sometimes that's nice. I mean,
Sometimes
ice cream is delicious.
Well, I did that like last week and I wasn't even sad. So not specifically.
Yeah, it's really
But,
hot. So much ice cream right now. Yeah.
And it was important for the bodily temperature to be healthy, and I hate ice cream. So, but in terms of winning and being like, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. That happens to everyone.
It's I was gonna say it's nice to hear you say that, but that's not the right word. It's comforting to hear you talk about this, because I experienced that too. Things that you feel like you failed, things that haven't worked out the way you want them to. And I'm hearing you say that it opens up new opportunities because you weren't in the music theory class in this strict set of rules. You started to approach it in a different way. And that grew into you recording your album.
Yeah.
And you experimenting in a way that works for you. And I as you were talking, I was thinking of this quote. I can't remember who said it. Something like, it's not hard. It's not that it's hard. It's just not easy yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And also sometimes it's not hard. It's new.
Yes.
We haven't done everything. So like some things are going to seem hard, but it's like new.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I completely agree with that.
Well, I want to say hi to Aaliyah, of course. So nice to see you on here. And Lucas said goodbye. Great to hear from you both. Thanks. It's been such a pleasure, Anthony. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about music, composing, creativity. If you're interested in finding more of Anthony's music, you can go to anthonytyjohnson.com. And you have some resources about composing, some creative tips of the week. You can visit my website, creativemusicwriting.com. And this interview will be up there too. It's up there right now. Anthony, is there anything else you would like to share before we sign off for the day?
To share. Yes. One phrase, and it's, I love this thing called music. Always protect your love of music because it's fantastic. And so that's the thing. Get excited about music. Get fired up about music. And then that creativity will come. But you have to love music. Last thing. I love music so much.
All right. I can't taint that. I can't say anything else. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Next week, I'm interviewing Lee Hoffman, a brilliant singer, composer. So we're going to talk some more next Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Anthony, thank you so much. It's been a joy.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful day. See you later.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.